Hey everybody, hope you're doing great today. In this video, I want to talk about filtration, specifically filtering your aquarium. Why do we use filters? What do we use them for? What are the purposes behind them? Let's jump in onto that topic. So there are a couple different types of filters that we use for our aquariums. You've got sponge filters, hang on the back filters. Sponge filters are driven by an air pump. Hang on the back filters usually have a motor in them. And you also have your canister filters. Canister filters are mainly external. You can sit them in the bottom of your cabinet and you've got an intake and an output tube that hang on the back. The nice thing about canister filters is they can be pretty powerful. They've got a lot of different filter media that you can use in there. So you combine layers of filter media. You can have a sponge in there. You can have biomedia, which basically allows the bacteria to attach to certain things like ceramic pellets, ceramic tablets. You can also have plastic sphere type things in there that basically same type of concept. The bacteria is attaching to those plastic spheres, and as the water flows past those bacteria colonies, the bacteria take up that nitrite, take up that ammonia, convert it. The ammonia is converted to nitrite, and the nitrite is converted to nitrate, which nitrate, as we all know, is less toxic to your tank compared to ammonia and nitrite. So why the differences in filtration? Basically, it's going to depend on factors like what type of fish you have, what type of plants you have, if you have real plants in there. Some plants do not like fast flow, so something like a canister filter or hang on the back filter, which has a tendency to have a fast flow in that tank, can cause those plants to basically dissolve. They basically rot away and they won't survive. So you need slower moving filtration, which something like a sponge filter will be able to better do compared to your canister filter or your hang on the back filter. There are also mechanical filters that are internal to the tank. I've got an example of one right here behind me. This is a Fluval U4 in-tank filter. So the nice thing about it is a mechanical filter. It stays inside. You don't have anything hanging on the back. So there's very little chance of water leaking out of the filter. Whereas if you have a hang on the back filter like this one over here, this is one simply hangs on the back of the tank. There is always a possibility that it backflows. It can overflow out the back of the tank. While I don't think you'll get any holes in this because it's made pretty solidly, in some of the cases you'll see that the motors are separable. Basically in the filters you can actually detach the motor. There's a gasket in there, so there's always a potential that these filters will leak. Similarly with your canister filter, since the actual filter is sitting underneath the aquarium and you've got an intake tube and an outtake tube, it can leak. Those filters, if there's a gasket fails, if one of the hoses separates from the filter itself, you have the potential for a lot of water getting dumped around your tank, which can be a big mess to clean up. This tank also does have a bubble filter in the other corner over there. It's driven by an air pump. It's a 55-gallon tank. I did want to go a little bit overboard on the filtration, and the one nice thing about the bubble filter, I do have a battery-powered backup air pump, so if the power does go out, I can run that air pump on there and that'll keep that filter running, while obviously the internal electric filter, power goes out, that's not going to run. You're usually fine for 12 hours, 24 hours if the water's not running, the bacteria is still working in there. My recommendation if the power goes out is just don't feed the fish. That way you're not adding any more ammonia or nitrites in there. So not only are plants a consideration for the filter type, your fish as well. Some fish prefer very slow moving water, whereas other fish, they love that flow. They might originate from rivers where the rivers are continually flowing. So hang on the back filters that have continual flow going into the tank. That might be good for those type of fish versus the fish who like slower moving water than something like a sponge filter like this over here. It's great for that purpose. So researching your fish, what type of habitat they prefer. Do they prefer slow moving water, fast moving water? That's going to make your decision about what type of filter to get easier to do. If you're looking for a cleaner look, then the canister filter might be the best because you can just hang a couple tubes off the back. In my case, I did paint the back of the tank black, so you really can't see anything. So even if I had this hang on the back filter hanging on the back of there, you won't see the bottom of this based on the tank level. You'll definitely see water flowing in. If you looked at the top of the tank and you know, depending on the angle you're looking at, you'll see a little bit of this hanging into the tank, but on the whole, you're not going to see this. Versus my internal filter, you don't see anything on the back of the tank. You do see it internally. One negative of it does take up space in your tank. If you prefer to have more space for your fish to swim around, then an internal filter might not be a great idea. Similar with a sponge filter, some people don't like the look of these things. Not only is it large, black, you put it off in the corner, but then there's bubbles flowing out there. So that's not always a look that some people appreciate. So sponge filters are slow flow. So if you've got the fish or plants who need slow flow, then a sponge filter is ideal. Basically, you're running airline tubing into this. It's going to pump air through. The air is going to go to the top, and that's going to draw water into this sponge over here. Over time, stuff will collect. Bacteria also does build up in this sponge filter, and that helps with the processing of your ammonia and nitrites in the tank. Now, the bacteria that you have in there that are part of that nitrogen life cycle, they're all over the tank. They basically sit on surfaces. So anywhere you've got flowing water, they're going to sit on those surfaces. The water, as the water passes by, they grab the nitrite, they grab the ammonia, they process that, and then it moves on down further in the cycle. So similarly with this, as I mentioned here, I've got this filter on the back here. It shoots out water straight across. So there's definitely bacteria on the rock structure right there on the plants. So that's adding to the processing capability of my tank. So your mechanical filters, like your canister filter or your hang on the back filter, since they have a higher flow, they have a better ability to clean out the tank. A lot of the debris, anything kicked up by the fish poo, whatever, it gets sucked up into that filter, and then later on you'll clean that filter out to eliminate that waste from the tank. Sponge filter does the same thing, just a little slower flow. Now, if you wanted to increase the flow rate of this, you could always grab a power head. Basically, it's a powered motor that just pops right on top of here. And that power head pumps water through this filter over here, goes straight out wherever you point it, increases the flow rate through this. Whereas running this with an air pump is not as fast, but if you put a power head on top, you can actually increase the speed quite a bit there and increase the filtration. So with this type of thing, there's nothing really disposable on this. This is the entire filter right here. You can separate this lift tube over here. It just assists with moving water. One thing that I like about this is you put it at the bottom of the tank, the air helps move the water up towards the top so you get a good circulation, as well as that air coming from the air pump is oxygenating the tank as well. Your hang on the back filter does the same thing. Usually you'll have a drop tube over here. This is just a small piece of it. There's an extension you can put on. So that kind of goes down midway, bottom of the tank, however far you want to put it. And then as that water comes up, it flows through and it'll break the surface of the top of the tank water. And that helps oxygenate the water as well too. Similarly with canister filters, same type of concept. It takes the water out, it pumps the water back in. You can actually put in a spray bar on the top if you want more aeration. So basically what the spray bar does is you're connecting the output of that canister filter pump into a bar that sprays off in a couple different streams across the top of the tank. That helps aerate that water, oxygenate that water, and that keeps the oxygen levels of your tank up. As I mentioned with the sponge filter, this is all you have. You don't need to replace anything. These things will last, they can last the lifetime of your tank, if not longer. To clean it, what I would do for this is periodically I'll take it out of the tank, and within the same tank water that I've drained, if I'm doing a water change, just squeeze it out, get rid of all the mulm that's built up in there, and then just drop it back in and it's good as new. Now with the hang on the back filters, there's different types of filters that have different parts and features. In this case, this is a marine land filter. It has a little bio wheel over here. And with this bio wheel over here, as you can see, it's almost like a water wheel you'll see on a riverboat. It's got a lot of surface area. And so basically with this, what it's supposed to do is serve as a biological filtration. Bacteria will attach itself to this material, and then as the water flows by, this thing spins, and as it spins, the water is flowing over it, and the bacteria is in there. It's digesting the ammonia, it's digesting the nitrite, converting it to nitrate, and improving the water quality of your tank. So this is more the biological filtration part of this. It doesn't do any mechanical filtration. It does not take out any particulate. For taking out particulate, you get these little filter bags. So you can purchase these from the store. They say you should replace these every 2 to 3 months, depending on your fish stocking level, depending on how often you clean. And these just pop in here. And usually with these filter bags, they have charcoal inside. And the charcoal, in my opinion, is not necessary. We don't always need charcoal in our tanks. Charcoal is more needed if you have been treating your tank or you're getting your water from well water and it's not the best quality. You've got other particulates in there. You've got other chemicals in that water that you want to get rid of. Charcoal will not get rid of chloramines or chlorine. You need a separate chemical for that. But if you've got other certain chemicals that can filter that out. For the most part, I do not use charcoal in this tank. I did initially when I first set it up, and that was because it came with a charcoal filter. But after that, I'm not purchasing any more charcoal just for filtration purposes. I just use the sponges in there for mechanically filtering the water, taking out the larger particulate. So let's say you had a sick tank, you treated the tank for whatever disease, you put chemicals in there, and those chemicals are still in there. They don't come out. They'll come out partially through water changes. One way to take those chemicals out is through a charcoal filter. So let's say I did, for example, if I were going to treat my tank, if I treated it and then I wanted to, everything's back to normal, the fish are healthy. If I wanted to take those chemicals out of the tank because I no longer need it there, I would drop a charcoal filter in my filter over there to help clean that out. But that would be really the only time I would use a charcoal filter. Otherwise, I don't think it's necessary for your tank. I have seen examples of people running a tank without any filters. It is possible. It's going to depend on your stocking level. In most of the cases that I've seen, those running without a filter, they have a lot of plants in there and they don't have that many fish in there. And basically everything takes care of itself. The nitrogen cycle has been well established. All the bacteria has been there in there for a while. They have a few fish, they don't overfeed, and everything kind of works well. While there's no filter in there, that does not mean the water doesn't flow, especially if you have a heater in there. As we know, as the water gets heated, it rises, it goes up, and the cold water sinks down. While it's not very fast, that water does cycle in there if you have a heater in there. So it will cycle, it will move, and there is some slow flow in there, but it's not as fast as using a bubble filter or using a mechanical filter like your hang on the back or your canister filter. In terms of noise level, I don't know that any of the three filters I've talked about, the sponge, the hang on the back, or the canister filter, are quiet. Some can be a little noisier than others depending on what type of air pump you're using, depending on what type of brand it is, what type of equipment is in that filter. So for example, with a sponge filter, if I'm running a noisy pump, that's definitely something you can hear. In this case, for this tank, I am running a sponge filter and there is a pump in the back. So if everything's quiet in the room, then yeah, you can hear it. For the most part, you don't hear it. It kind of becomes part of the background noise. So we all know about algae. Algae is something people either hate or people don't mind. In my case, I don't really mind it. I let it grow in there. And I've got snails in there who like to eat it, and occasionally my fish will munch on it if they're able to get to it. But there are actually filters out that now encourage algae growth. So it might be a separate part of the filter. Either it could be in a sump section below the tank, basically where water is pumped out and it's pumped through this sump and then pumped back into the tank. And so they'll have a bright light in there that basically you encourage the algae to grow in this filter area. And as that algae grows, gets bigger, and the water passes through. So not only is there a bacteria cycle going on in there that's digesting the ammonia and nitrite, but that algae is actually taking up the nitrate. So that's reducing the overall nitrate level in your tank. The maintenance for that is over time, as that algae overgrows, you take that algae off, cut some of it off, shave some of it off, whatever, throw it out, compost it. The remaining algae will continue to grow, absorbing all the nitrates as your tank outputs them. There are different types of bubble filters you can get to. This is a basic one I got from Aquarium Co-op. There are some with moving parts too that have a little biomedia in there that gives the bacteria something to attach on. And as the air gets pumped into the filter, the biomedia in there gets agitated, it gets moved around, and that helps increase the exposure to the water as the water is flowing through, and then it helps with the biological process. So with regards to your mechanical filters, there is, like I mentioned with this hang on the back filter, you've got an internal filter pack that you purchase on a regular basis. You can buy 3-packs, 6-packs, whatever they're selling them in. And you can also avoid that expense by purchasing something like this. Basically, this is a filter media I bought from Amazon.com. And you can just cut it to size. It's basically a filter floss, and this will serve the same purpose as the filter in there. You could probably get a year more use out of this. Basically, once it's in there, it also becomes a biological surface. The bacteria will attach to it. When you're doing a water change, if you got the water in a bucket there, take it out, squeeze it out, get all the mulm out of it, get all the debris out of it, put it back in there, and then let it go like it's new again. Something like this, it's a 12-inch long, 1-inch thick, and I believe I purchased it for $10, $15, but this will last a long time for a hang on the back filter. This can also be used for your canister filters. With canister filters though, you gotta be careful. You gotta make sure you're not interfering with your flow rate, because those are higher speed. They're all in one. You need to check out the flow rate there, make sure you're not reducing the flow rate. Part of that with reducing the flow rate is you run the risk of burning the motor out. So you don't want to overdo it at the same time too. So what kind of filters do you use in your tank? What are your favorite types of filters, and how do you hack them? Do you have any hacks for those filters to help make them better, help make them cheaper, run more efficiently, or run more cheaply? Drop those in the comments below. Let me know your tips and tricks. And thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.